Hello everybody, welcome back to Rocky Talk. We're here at the UT Culinary Institute. My name is Chef Tyler White. I graduated from UT in 2010 with a master's in retail hospitality and tourism. Upon graduating, I was very lucky and got to work with Dr. John Anton with the UT Culinary Institute. I've been working with the Culinary Institute for 10 years now, and we are now at the point where we're getting ready to introduce a minor in fall of 21, hopefully, to where UT students will be able to take culinary for credit for the first time here at the University of Tennessee. I'm glad everybody was able to come today. This is my first Facebook Live event, so bear with me if there's any technical things that we go through. We'll try to fix them as soon as we can. We are here at the Culinary Institute. I have lots of large equipment that will come on. Hopefully there's not too much background noise, but we do have some fridges and some units that may be kicking on as we go through this. Today we're going to work on a focaccia bread recipe. We created this recipe about 8 years ago here at the Culinary Institute. We've made it well over 200 times with very few errors. We should be able to go through this very easily today. We'll talk about some of the different variations that you can do at home, substituting different ingredients for what you may have. With the coronavirus going on, we've seen an increase in people wanting to make bread at home. We were able today, we had 76-degree temperatures in our kitchen, we were able to produce this bread from start to finish in 2.5 hours. Generally, we can do it in 3.5 to 4. When I've made it at home over the past couple months, sometimes it takes 4 to 5. It's really going to depend on our temperature at home, on how long it takes us to produce this bread. Our ingredients that were supposed to have been sent out are very simple. We do about 6 cups of flour. Okay, it's going to be roughly 30 ounces. We use bread flour here at school. Bread flour has been hard to find at the grocery stores lately. You can use all-purpose flour. It'll work relatively the same for this recipe, and I'll show you later some different breads where we use bread and all-purpose to show it didn't make much of a difference. Okay, we have 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. If you're going to use iodized salt because that's all you have at home, cut that down a little bit. The iodized salt, because it's a finer granule, tends to be a little bit more salty and have a bigger impact, so cut that down. We have a 1/4 cup of white sugar. We're going to use 2 tablespoons of instant yeast, this is the instant yeast that we use. If you're going to use dry active yeast, you can use a 1-to-1 ratio, but be careful, it's going to take a little bit longer to rise. Dry active does need to be reconstituted or hydrated before we use it. Instant yeast does not. Grocery stores lately have been out of yeast, and many of the ones here in Knoxville, because people are trying to make bread. So if you can get instant, I prefer instant, it goes a little bit quicker, but dry active works relatively the same, just takes a little bit longer. Okay? We have olive oil. If you don't want to use olive oil, you're more than welcome to use vegetable oil, a blended oil, whichever oil you prefer. And I'll show you a bread later where we didn't use any oil. We substituted something a little bit different to make it work. We're going to also use water. This recipe can be altered in many different ways. Because I use 6 cups of flour, each time I measure those 6 cups, it's going to be a different weight of flour. The amount of water, we're going to need somewhere in the 2.5 to 3.5 cups of water, depending on humidity, depending on the specific flour that we use, and depending on the specific amount of flour that we use. The best way to go through this recipe is by weight, but most people at home have volume measurements that is easier to do. So we did volume today. If you guys want a weight measurement one, let me know, and I'll send you our recipe that we use when we're using weight. We're going to use a stand mixer today. Ours is a globe. Most people at home have a KitchenAid. Ours is a 5-quart mixer. You don't want to go any smaller than that. We don't want to burn our mixer out today, but we'll use our 5-quart mixer. Because we're using instant yeast, we can add it with everything else all at the same time in the bowl. So we'll add our flour, our kosher salt, sugar. I like to add my yeast in a different part of the bowl than where my salt was. Salt can kill yeast. Depending on how long you let it sit, there can be a reaction to it. So I like to add my yeast to the opposite side of the bowl from where my salt was. We can go ahead and add our oil, and we'll add it to our stand mixer. Now, to do a mixer on Facebook Live, there's going to be some noise. I should be able to talk over it. To mix this, we're going to use our dough hook. Standard mixer comes with 3 attachments, a paddle, a whip, and a dough hook. We're going to install our dough hook today. Okay, and we'll lift it up. Now, our water that we're going to add in stages. Because we don't know the exact ratio that we need, because we're doing a volume recipe, we want to add water a little bit at a time to make sure that we don't add too much water. If we add too much water, we won't be able to form our dough later. It'll be too soupy. And this is the #1 problem we've seen in class when we've made this, is students adding too much water too quickly. I like to add it in a 1 cup, half cup, quarter cup kind of ratio until I get the consistency that I want. We can always add more water, but if we've added too much, it's harder to go back and add more ingredients to level it all out. I'm going to turn my mixer on. I like to start on a low to low medium. The higher you start, the more flour that kicks around. Okay? We're going to add about 1 cup of water. We want our water to be about room temperature, somewhere in the 70 to 90 range Fahrenheit. Once we've added our 1 cup and it's been absorbed, we'll add about half cup more. If your water's too hot, it can kill the yeast. So try not to make it too hot. Use your finger, test it. If it's too hot for your finger, it's going to be too hot for the yeast. Okay, add about a quarter cup. Once our dough starts to form, we can turn the mixer up to a higher speed to start kneading. We are not going to knead this dough and test for any form of gluten. We're just trying to mix it thoroughly. This is not going to be a bread that we're forming. It's going to go into a sheet pan. Increase the speed a little bit, add another quarter cup. What we're looking for is the dry flour to come off the edges of the bowl. Make sure there's no dry flour on the bottom. Now that we're getting close, I'm going to start adding about a tablespoon at a time. 1 tablespoon too much sometimes can be the difference in this dough. Once I'm not seeing any more dry flour on the side, our dough looks nice and wet but not soupy, I'll increase the speed even more to try to pull it all together. We don't want it to be like pizza dough. I don't want it to be nice and firm and smooth and elastic. That can be a little much for this one. If you want it that way, it's fine. Your focaccia will still work. It may be a little bit tougher though as we go through the final stages with it. What we're looking for here is trying to get all the dough to kind of come together, pull off the sides. Total mixing can take somewhere in the 3 to 4 minute range from the time we start adding water. All right, I'm starting to pull together. It's starting to form a loose ball. I have a variable speed mixer. If you guys only have the 3 stages, I recommend only going to about stage 2. Okay, it's nice and clean. We're gonna turn it off. I'll pull the dough hook out and show you guys what the bowl should look like ideally. I like to use a rubber glove. I know that those are precious right now, but it helps get the dough off of our dough hook. Okay, we should be able to pull it off nice and cleanly. I still have about a cup of water, so this recipe used about 3 cups today. I have a little more extra virgin olive oil that we're going to use. We're going to let this dough rise in this bowl. we should only have to dirty 2 to 3 items today. This is item number 1. I'm not trying to mix the oil into the dough. I want it to coat the top and the bottom of the dough so that it doesn't stick and it will release easier later when we go to pull it out. So I'm able to move the dough around the bowl. It's nice and easy. Take our glove off. I'm going to wrap this. We're gonna let it sit in a 70+ degree kitchen. Today we were able to have this double in size in an hour. There is no time restraint on this. Your kitchen might be cooler or warmer. What we're worried about is the doubling in size. I have a dough that we made earlier. This one has easily doubled in size. We made this one at about 3:30. It's been about an hour in our kitchen. Your kitchen may take a little bit longer, maybe a little bit quicker, but this is what we're looking for with our dough. So we're gonna set this one aside, and we're gonna work on our first risen dough. This recipe makes 1/2 sheet pan. That's about an 18 by 13 inch pan. Your pans at home may be a little bit different. These are relatively inexpensive. You can get them on Amazon. I use Webstaurant to get these. They come in quarters, they come in halves, and they come in full. For our dough, we want to add a little more olive oil to the bottom. If there's one ingredient that we're gonna add more than anything today, it's gonna be olive oil. Spread it around. We'll pull our dough out. Because we used oil in the bowl, our bowl is relatively clean. In order to help clean this in your sink, go ahead and fill the bowl with water. Let it sit. It'll stop the dough from getting crusty in there. It'll make cleanup a whole lot easier. Okay. Our dough, I like to press it down, then lift it and flip it. That way the oil that was on the bottom is now on the top. That's going to help our dough not stick to the plastic wrap that we put on top. This recipe calls for 2 risings. If you wanted to make this ahead of time, once your dough doubled in size in our mixing bowl, you could take that dough, refrigerate it, and retard it, and then when you're ready for your focaccia in the next day or 2, you could possibly pull it out and let it go again. This could go through 3 possible risings if we wanted it to, but for ease, we only let it do 2. We're gonna wrap this with plastic wrap. When you're flattening this out, don't use your fingertips, use your palm. Get it as flat as we can get it. Add our plastic wrap. It's okay if your plastic wrap touches the dough. Because there's oil on it, when we go to remove this later, it's going to be very easy. This pan is nice. When this is doubled in size, it's gonna come up to the edge of the pan and be ready for us to pop in the oven. So we're gonna set this one aside, and we have some Facebook magic, where we have a dough that's done its second rise. Because we put oil on it, I can easily remove the plastic wrap. It does not affect the shape of the dough. Your dough, each one's going to be different. It's a living kind of organism. My corners don't have dough in it, and that's fine. We don't have to make sure that the pan is completely full. Now we have the option to add toppings. I learned how to make focaccia about 20 years ago at a place called Highland Lake Inn in Flat Rock, North Carolina. I worked in the bakery. It's the first culinary job I ever had. And the baker had her recipe. She used a starter. She spent a lot of time making the dough for us. And at night, being the 16-year-old I was, I came into the restaurant. She told me what she wanted on the focaccia every night, and then she left. She wanted flat leaf parsley, red onion, oil, salt, and pepper. That was fine for the first night. Beyond then, I started getting creative and putting all different types of toppings on it, and every day she'd come in and yell at me and get mad at me that I didn't do what I was supposed to do. When I teach this recipe now in class, I do red onion, flat leaf parsley, oil, salt, and pepper. You can add whatever you want to it as your topping, and I'll show you that later. This is about half of a red onion. 3/4 of a bunch of flat leaf parsley. We're going to add even more olive oil. I'm going to add 1/4 to 1/2 cup of olive oil, salt, and pepper. If you wanted to add dry seasonings of any sort, or you want to add any other spice, you're more than welcome to. We'll mix these up. You want enough oil so that when you pick it up, there's still some oil sitting on the bottom of the bowl. I need a little bit more. The secret for us making a good focaccia is having enough oil on top of the bread so that it covers it and it will help it turn golden brown. One of the key features of a focaccia is the fingertip imprints. Use the tips of your fingers, make some imprints. These little wells are going to hold the olive oil, they'll hold some of the spices, they'll hold some of the seasonings as we go through the cooking process. Okay, we're going to add our toppings, spread them out. We're not making pizza. Okay, so I'm not looking to have 100 toppings all over it and covered in sauce. We want each piece that we cut to have a little bit of each of the ingredients. What I'm more concerned about is that all of the edges are rubbed with olive oil so that it browns nice and evenly. If you don't add the oil, when you bake this bread, it's going to come out very similar in color. Okay? We want to be nice and golden brown. So I have a little bit extra of our toppings left. Okay? We'll use that for our other one. An important feature that I like with the bread is adding cheese. You can add whatever cheese you'd like. We've done it with blue cheese before. We've done it with cheddars. We've done it with Havartis. Parmesan seems to be the easiest one to use. I have about 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese here. I like to start on the edges and work my way in. Again, it's not a pizza. We're not trying to make sure that every piece is going to be smothered in cheese. While you could do that, it's just an added topping to it. We want to be able to see the parsley, see the onions, and this would be our focaccia bread that we could put in the oven. Here at school, we use convection ovens. Our convection oven is set to about 350 degrees. Your home oven needs to be adjusted. Our convection ovens run a little bit hotter. You want your home oven to be about 375 degrees. This bread, depending on your oven, is going to take somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. I like to rotate it after the first 7 to 8 minutes, and then I rotate it every 5 minutes just to make sure that it's browning evenly. Every oven has some hot spots and some cool spots, so by rotating it, we can make sure that it comes out nice and even. Now, some more Facebook magic. I have a finished one. This is what our bread should look like when it comes out of the oven. It's nice and golden brown. Our parsley's on there. By tossing our ingredients with olive oil, it helps prohibit it from burning. So I like to use thinly sliced red onions, parsley. I wish Allie was watching this because she'd be very proud that I'm doing her parsley and red onion one. But this is what a standard focaccia that we make here would look like. We got creative today, and 16-year-old Chef Tyler came out, and we made some different various focaccia breads I'm going to show you. This one, we did a leek pesto that we ended up rubbing the focaccia with leek pesto. We added a morel cheddar and shiitake mushrooms. We tossed the shiitake mushrooms with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Because we used a cheddar, we're going to see a different browning reaction. Each cheese you use is going to be unique depending on the fat content and the melting characteristics of those cheeses. So this is our leek pesto with shiitake and morel cheddar. We have some really nice Granger County tomatoes that are coming out right now. It's a little bit early for tomato season, but they have a lot of hot houses they do. So this one we made a basil and garlic oil. We did yellow and red tomatoes and Parmesan cheese. We kept it very, very simple. but it looks very nice going out on a buffet, if you're set it out to have guests coming over. I like to put ingredients where I can cut it nice and evenly, and they get a whole piece of those tomatoes. This one is a little more complicated. Can we turn focaccia into pizza? Yes. We spread this with a crushed Italian tomato. We added whole basil. There is prosciutto, Parmesan cheese, and sliced mozzarella. As the mozzarella melted, it did kind of sink a little bit, but it's in very nice, even lines that we could cut it, and somebody gets every piece that they want. They get a nice piece of mozzarella, they get prosciutto, and everything with it. We did add olive oil on top. You want a thin layer of tomato sauce with this. Don't put as much on as if you're making pizza, but then you could call this a pizza focaccia if you so wanted to. Our final one is the most complicated. This focaccia, instead of adding oil to the dough, we added the leek pesto to the dough. It was able to rise and do everything the same, but now I have that leek pesto throughout the dough. You could go in and add Italian herbs, you could add crushed red pepper, you could add cheese in the dough if you want to. We added sun-dried tomatoes on top. Rehydrate your sun-dried tomatoes in water for 30 to 45 minutes before you put them on top. If you put dry, sun-dried tomatoes on there, they will burn. We added Kalamata olives, shiitake mushrooms, and pickled ramps, as well as Parmesan cheese on top. The reason they all brown nicely is the amount of oil that we put on top. This is a heavy, heavy oil bread that we use for this. Now, what can we do with the focaccia when it's done? Okay, so we used our parsley and red onion focaccia, and we came up with 2 or 3 different variations of things we can do with it. First off, obviously we can cut it and eat it. We can dip it in a flavored oil. We can take that focaccia bread, I cut it in half horizontally, dipped it in a little bit of olive oil, and seared it in a non-stick pan. It creates a crust on one edge. Again, more olive oil. The more olive oil I can add, the better the bread is. Now we have kind of an open-faced sandwich type thing that we can do. We've been lucky that we've been able to partner with UT alumni the past 2 years and do some tailgates. Hopefully, fall 2020, we'll be able to tailgate with UT alumni again. And we have a tailgate idea that we're going to propose. This is a focaccia and bruschetta. So we took our focaccia, we cut it in half, we seared it, we made a fresh tomato bruschetta with reduced balsamic, extra virgin olive oil, Parmesan cheese. This would be a nice appetizer that you can do with tomatoes coming out this summer. Nice and simple. You could do it with a salsa, whatever you guys want. So we could turn it into an appetizer, a canapé, an open-faced sandwich, whatever you'd like. We decided to make sandwiches. We have 2 different sandwiches on here. The first one is just a tomato, prosciutto, and Havarti sandwich with arugula. We took the same sandwich without the arugula and turned it into a panini. Okay, so we could press it. These work better when the bread is about a day old. We can take any extras of the bread. We like to take the ends and the crust and turn them into croutons to have them with salads. We've taken them and sliced them really thin and pinched it together in a circle, baked them, and used that as a mold for a salad that we've done for some catering here at UT. That is all I have on focaccia. That was a lot of demos very, very quickly. If you guys have any questions about this, I know with Facebook Live, traditionally, you can talk and go through at the same time. With me demoing, I can't really hold the iPad with it, but I will try to log on to the UT Alumni Facebook over the next 2 days and answer any questions that you guys may have with it. I hope that we see you guys here in the fall. I will make sure that for the alumni tailgates that I bring focaccia at least once. I hope to see you guys there and talk about your experiences in making focaccia, any questions you may have, show me your photos. Very, very simple recipe that you can make in a couple hours at home, and you don't have to make a lot of dishes. We hope to see you soon on Rocky Top. That's it from the Culinary Institute.